In my previous life, I died the day before my wedding. As soon as I took my last breath, my parents couldn't wait to take my kidney. My sister, Emily, was given a second chance at life. Standing before my grave, she grinned and said, "Sister, everything you had is now mine, including your man." With that, she pulled out a lipstick and smeared it across my photo. Then, she stomped on the bouquet of baby's breath that my nemesis, Ethan, had sent me. Now, I am reborn back to the day before I made the first kidney donation to Emily. Chapter 1. Looking at my parents' concerned faces, I couldn't help but laugh. Suppressing the hatred bubbling within me, I feigned deep emotion. Before leaving, Emily whispered, "Should we have someone keep an eye on her?" Mom lovingly hugged her shoulders. "Don't worry, she's very obedient." And indeed, I was very obedient. In my previous life, I devoted myself entirely to saving Emily, hoping for even a hint of my parents' attention. But after the surgery, as I lay in the hospital bed, I was utterly ignored. It wasn't until the day I was discharged that they remembered to come pick me up. And my kidney only lasted 2 years. 2 years later, Emily suffered kidney failure again. They pinned their hopes on me once more. But I had only 1 kidney left. Even now, I still don't know whether my death was an accident or if someone orchestrated it. Either way, in this life, they can forget about it. After leaving the hospital, I immediately bought a plane ticket. Just as I was about to go through security, I was caught. In that moment, I realized I had always been under their watchful gaze. My phone must have had a tracker installed. I hurled my phone at one of them, hitting him square in the face. Taking advantage of their surprise, I bolted. At that moment, I held on to one belief: I must not be caught. Otherwise, my kidney would definitely be gone. To save Emily, they would stop at nothing. Using my agility, I narrowly escaped their pursuit. In my panic, I dove into a black car. Huddled like a quail, I urged the driver to speed away. The driver glanced at the man beside me, and I instinctively looked up at him. That one glance left me stunned. It was my nemesis from my previous life, Ethan. In this life, our encounter seemed to have come a month early. Chapter 2. "Mr. Smith, please save me." I clung to his leg, refusing to let go. Right now, he was the only person who could stand up to them and save me. He looked displeased, his cold voice laced with anger. "Let go. Get out." Reluctantly, I released my grip and offered a bargain. "Save me, and I'll help you win the top prize in the fashion design competition." I clutched his clothes, my eyes filled with desperation and pleading. In this life, I had to cling to Ethan to avoid repeating the mistakes of my past. His gaze was skeptical. That cold stare felt like he was appraising a piece of merchandise. The next moment, his thin lips parted, icy words escaping them. "I don't need it." He seized my wrist with such force that I had to let go. Refusing to give up, I made one last attempt, my voice trembling. "Why not give it a try? You're not satisfied with your current entry, are you? Why not take what we both need and make it a win-win?" I felt tears welling up, seeing those people approaching, and my body shook uncontrollably. An overwhelming sense of fear enveloped me, suffocating me. The car window was knocked on, and my heart raced. I pressed myself against the car floor, hands clasped together, silently praying. In that critical moment, I hoped this man would show some humanity. The window didn't roll down, he merely said calmly, "Drive." The car sped away, and I let out a long sigh of relief. For now, I was safe. But just as I began to relax, my heart leaped back into my throat. He ordered the driver to pull over and gestured for me to get out. How could I possibly get out? I had to cling to him for dear life. I held onto the car door, resolutely refusing to budge. Using every ounce of persuasion, I pleaded, "I have no phone, no money. If I get out, I'll either be homeless or caught again. Please, show some kindness. Or at least give me a chance. If my designs don't meet your standards, you can kick me out then, okay?" Ultimately, he relented and took me back with him. Chapter 3. Sitting at the desk under his icy gaze, I slowly picked up a pencil. With you staring at me like this, I felt a shiver run down my spine, completely unable to start. Drawing upon my memory, I sketched a rough outline. It was this starlight dress that had allowed me to shine in the 10th fashion competition, showcasing my incredible talent. It also sparked Emily's jealousy and garnered this man's attention. But back then, my focus had been entirely on my toxic family. For their sake, I had clashed with him repeatedly, ultimately becoming his sworn enemy. Yet, in the end, he was the only one who remembered me, occasionally sending me bouquets of baby's breath. I dared a glance at him, and our eyes met. Quickly, I looked down. He wore a finely tailored white shirt, his figure elegantly straight. His black eyes flickered with disbelief before returning to their usual coolness. His sharp features appeared even more distinguished under the harsh light of the fluorescent lamp. Why hadn't I noticed before how handsome he was? Oh, I had been so absorbed in my so-called family that I never really looked at him. 2 days later, my design draft began to take shape. Half a month later, the final piece was complete. A misty blue starlight dress with an off-the-shoulder design, devoid of traditional rhinestones and glitter. The fabric was adorned only with tiny sequins, weaving the vastness of the stars into the garment. It was dreamy and romantic. Ethan's dark eyes sparkled, outshining the sunlight streaming through the window. Seizing the moment, I requested to personally participate in the competition. He didn't respond immediately but reminded me, "Your parents will be there too." Clearly, he knew everything about me. I twirled the pencil in my hand and casually asked, "Did Emily get a kidney transplant?" He calmly began to tidy up the mess around us. "No, they're still searching for you everywhere." I scoffed. "They're really persistent. They'd never guess I'm with you." With a mischievous laugh, I effortlessly took the remaining fabric from his hands. "This isn't for you, I'll handle it myself." As my fingers brushed against his palm, he instinctively recoiled. Then he stood up, his voice as cold as ever. "Luna, let's discuss a partnership." I readily agreed. It was exactly what I wanted. That day, we forged a secret agreement. The path to revenge had officially begun. Chapter 4. On the day of the fashion design competition, I attended as the design director of the Smith conglomerate. As I shared my design inspiration, I felt 2 venomous glares from the audience that nearly pierced through me. When I finally held the winning trophy, I smirked provocatively at them. Seeing their furious expressions only made me smile wider. In my past life, they feared I would overshadow Emily and constantly sought to suppress me. Whenever I had a new design, they insisted I show it to them first. Then, just a few days later, Emily would unveil a similar design. The 3 of them would accuse me in unison of plagiarizing my sister's work, followed by a barrage of harsh criticism. This tactic worked every time. I foolishly believed that sisters share similar thoughts and have a special bond. Looking back, I realize how naive I was. After stepping off the stage, the 2 of them pushed through the crowd, eager to confront me. I forced a smile. "Mom, Dad, long time no see. How's Emily doing?" Suddenly, a sharp slap landed across my face. The sound was crisp and loud, drawing everyone's attention. This reunion unfolded exactly as I had imagined. Perfect. Clutching my cheek, I sobbed. "Mom, what did I do to deserve this public humiliation?" Linda, my stepmother, lost all semblance of composure upon seeing me. She grabbed my hair, cursing, "I raised you with so much effort, and you disregard your sister's life, doing such heartless things. I swear I'll beat you to death today." I turned my head, my gaze icy, a glint of bloodlust flashing in my eyes. "You raised me? What right do you have to lecture me, you homewrecker?" I successfully provoked her anger. Fuming, she raised her hand for another slap. I used her momentum to step back, hitting my head on the edge of the stage. The sight of blood drew a crowd, just as I had planned. Murmurs and pointing fingers filled the air, just what I wanted. I wailed dramatically. I was wrong not to donate my kidney to my sister, but I had my reasons. I can't sacrifice my own child for her. This was a justification I concocted on the spot, one that would elicit sympathy. Sure enough, several women stepped forward. One of them helped me up and called for an ambulance. Seizing the moment, I choked back tears. Even though I'm not your biological daughter, I've always treated you as my real mom. I don't expect equal treatment, but you can't put my child's life on the line for your daughter. Children are innocent. At the very least, let me have my baby before I donate my kidney. Chapter 5. Linda stood dumbfounded, never expecting me to defy her, especially in such a public spectacle. She tugged at my father John, urging him to intervene. John, eager to prove I was lying, wasted no effort. He said, "Luna, you volunteered to donate your kidney to your sister. Don't twist the facts. And when did you get pregnant? You're making up stories." Linda scoffed. "So you claim you're pregnant? Fine, who's the father? Bring him here so everyone can see. After all, you've already disgraced the family, it doesn't matter anymore." I was at a loss. Who should I say the father was? The atmosphere turned tense. In the 2 minutes of my silence, many people turned against me, siding with Linda. Linda, triumphant, said, "See everyone? She's a liar. You can't believe a word she says. I am the father." A deep, clear voice rang out from the entrance. A man in a suit, exuding an air of natural elegance, strode in quickly. He scooped me up, and before leaving, he issued a warning. "Anyone who harms Luna is my enemy." With that, he shot a fierce look at Linda. She shuddered, nearly collapsing if not for John's support. The crowd gasped. Ethan was intimidating, but his family was even more so. It was said they could make someone vanish without a trace. Chapter 6. Sorry for causing you trouble today. I hadn't felt it before, but now that things had calmed down, my head was throbbing. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, his fingers tapping rhythmically. His gaze lingered on my messy, blood-streaked hair. His eyes darkened, his expression stern, clearly disapproving of my earlier actions. This kind of self-destructive behavior comes at a steep price. I shrugged indifferently. "You have to give to gain." He said nothing more, just handed me a wet wipe. "Clean up, I'll take you to the hospital." I wiped the blood from my face unconcerned. "No need, I can handle it at home. As partners, I have the right to ensure your safety." Before I could respond, he was already driving toward the hospital. Being partners had its perks. I enjoyed his assistance the entire time. Who said he was cold and unapproachable? I found our interactions quite pleasant. Like old friends. Perhaps it was the connection we shared from our past lives. So being together felt comfortable for both of us. Before we officially started working together, he gifted me a new phone and a watch. He also provided me with various self-defense tools: pepper spray, a Swiss Army knife, a flashlight. He mentioned that the watch had a precise tracking function. Unless absolutely necessary, I shouldn't take it off. Then he pointed to his wristwatch, which was the same model. I accepted them without hesitation, responding casually, "I'll pay you back when I get my salary." His lips twitched slightly as he waved his hand. "No need to repay me, just do your job well." "Job? Oh, I'll make sure to design well." As I familiarized myself with Ethan's company and work environment, Emily underwent her kidney transplant. I scoffed, whose kidney isn't a kidney? Why was mine such a point of contention? Now she had to accept someone else's. Linda had told me that sisters typically have a higher match rate and less rejection, so I fell for her nonsense. But after Emily's transplant, she indulged in food and drink, living recklessly. Another failure was surely on the horizon. Chapter 7. A month later, Karen, the CEO of a German fashion company, arrived for an inspection. Many fashion design companies were eager to impress. I volunteered for the opportunity. I was quite familiar with Karen from my past life. I had worked tirelessly to secure a deal with him. John's company had seen a significant revenue increase. Yet, The credit went to Emily. They claimed her outstanding designs convinced him to collaborate with us. This time, I would secure the deal. Not just with Karen, but with many future partners as well. Without revenue, they wouldn't even be able to cover Emily's medical bills. Isn't that amusing? From my past experiences, I knew that Karen favored simple, casual styles. His wardrobe was all about comfort and ease. So, for our meeting, I dressed in a white t-shirt, casual pants, and light-colored dad shoes. Unsurprisingly, I was ridiculed by my competitors. Dressed like that, she dares to show up? What a bumpkin! How did she become Ethan's design director? Must be due to her skills in the bedroom. The one laughing the hardest was Ivy. Who knows? With her flat chest and flat behind, what man would want her? She was Linda's niece, currently interning in John's design department. In my previous life, she and Emily had relished bullying me. Tattling, sabotaging, giving terrible advice. She was everywhere. My gaze fell on her ample chest, and I sneered. You're well endowed, but is it real? With all that stuffing, I wonder how it feels. Ivy's voice turned shrill with anger. Luna, what nonsense are you spouting? I'll tear your mouth apart. I lazily lifted my eyes, giving her a cold glance. My tone was calm, lacking emphasis, yet it carried an undeniable weight. Did I remember incorrectly? I recall you had a breast augmentation at the city's top hospital. Oh, maybe I was mistaken. Ivy lunged at me, but I caught her raised hand. With a swift motion, I slapped her. Rubbing my palm, I warned. Remember this, don't mess with me. Ivy stared at me in disbelief, as if she had seen a ghost. Indeed, witnessing a timid little rabbit stand up for herself was quite shocking. Chapter 8. Under the stunned gazes of everyone, I signed a cooperation agreement with Karen. Every step I took landed squarely on his heartstrings. How could he refuse to sign? Within days, he placed a large order. As the whole team worked tirelessly, I quickly secured several more partnerships. In no time, Ethan's company surged ahead in the fashion industry. Seizing the momentum, I launched a series of new clothing styles. Each time, I released them a day before John's company announced theirs. I also poached many of his old clients. He suspected there was a traitor in his company and spent a long time reorganizing. But the loss of clients continued unabated. That wasn't the worst part. Linda and John started fighting nonstop. It all began when Ethan invited me to dinner. During the meal, he asked if I wanted to watch a show, one of self-destruction. I was puzzled, and then he showed me a photo. Pointing to the boy in the picture, he said, "Your brother." I nearly spat out my rice. What? Whose brother? He wiped the rice off his phone. Your dad's illegitimate son, your brother. I was dumbfounded. This was too outrageous. Then, with a sly smile, he laid out a plan. Finally, he said slowly, "The highest form of revenge is to watch from the sidelines." So, I anonymously sent Linda a message. Sure enough, it caused quite a stir. I asked him when we would move to the next step. He closed his laptop and put on his coat. No rush, let's eat first. I was anxious. I wanted to see the drama unfold. During dinner, I unexpectedly ran into Emily and Ivy. Ivy left first after a brief exchange. Emily, smiling, approached me. Sister, what a coincidence. Can we eat together? I didn't look up. Your parents are fighting, and you still have time to eat? Her smile faltered but returned. It's just a misunderstanding. It will be cleared up soon. I looked up and bluntly said, Then you should hurry home to help explain. She bit her lip, her eyes reddening. If you don't want me here, I'll leave. She cast a glance at Ethan, a shadow crossing her face. Yes, leave quickly. Don't ruin my meal. She pouted, and as she passed by Ethan, she suddenly collapsed towards him. Chapter 9. The man had no choice but to catch her. His expression darkened instantly. After pushing her away, he swiftly removed his coat and tossed it aside. He wiped his hands repeatedly with a wet wipe before finally stopping. I couldn't help but laugh. Seriously, his reaction was priceless. Emily, humiliated, struggled to contain her anger and softly apologized. "I'm sorry. I just had surgery recently and sometimes feel dizzy, so..." He offered no sympathy, his voice cold and cutting. "If you're sick, go to a hospital. Don't wander around." At his words, Emily's tears began to fall, accompanied by muffled sobs. I felt a wave of discomfort. I couldn't stand her pathetic act. Ethan, unable to tolerate it any longer, pulled me away. I quickly asked, "What about your coat?" "Forget it." Well, Emily's sobs grew louder, proving that the victim card doesn't always work, especially not with someone like Ethan. It was oddly satisfying. As part of our plan, I sent Linda another anonymous photo. This one featured John with his son. Simultaneously, a mysterious man acquired half of John's company shares. Now, John was truly caught between a rock and a hard place. In the parking garage, Emily cornered me, her voice rising with anger. "Luna, did you have anything to do with this?" I smirked. Ever seen someone with bound feet? Never seen anyone with a bound brain. Where's your head at? Her teeth clenched in frustration as she took deep breaths to steady herself. "Sister, I don't blame you for not donating your kidney. Let's just move on and return to how things were, okay?" This girl really must be delusional. I sighed, feigning deep thought. "Emily, are you brainwashed or just plain stupid?" "Oh, right, you don't have a brain." Finally losing her composure, Emily snapped. "Sister, you brought this on yourself. Don't blame me for being ruthless." With a swift motion, she signaled two men lurking behind a pillar. Great, when the soft approach fails, she resorts to force? I turned and ran. But I didn't get far before they caught me. These high heels are really a hindrance. Chapter 10. Get her in the car and teach her a lesson, she commanded, eyes glinting with malice. She had likely plotted this for a long time, nursing a grudge since I refused to donate my kidney. She was just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Luna? Emily?" A familiar voice made me spin around. Dr. Eric? The nephrologist who performed my surgery. He was also my fiancé in a past life. Since he often accompanied Emily to her appointments, we had grown somewhat acquainted. After I donated my kidney, we became closer, eventually falling in love. But shortly after my death, he married Emily. My gaze turned icy. I cursed inwardly, birds of a feather indeed. "Dr. Eric, what are you doing here?" Because of Eric's appearance, Emily had no choice but to abandon her plans. She lowered her voice, her grip tightening on my arm. "Next time, you won't be so lucky." I met her cold gaze with a steady one of my own. "Next time, just don't fall into my hands." Eric invited both Emily and me to dinner. I was about to refuse when I heard hurried footsteps approaching. In 10 seconds, Ethan sprinted over, wielding a stick. His sleeves were rolled up and his collar was loosened. Was he here to fight? Seeing that I was okay, he let out a small sigh of relief. His dark eyes lost their worry, returning to their usual calm. He stepped forward, positioning himself between Emily and me. His gaze turned icy as he looked at her. I instinctively grabbed his arm, signaling that I was fine. Then, as if nothing had happened, I calmly said, "Sorry, I can't join you for dinner." Under Eric's watchful eyes, I took Ethan's arm and began to leave. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Does he like you?" We both asked each other our questions simultaneously. He gestured for me to answer first, and I protested. "Why don't you go first?" He withdrew his arm, opened the car door, and buckled my seatbelt himself. Once settled in the driver's seat, he said, "I noticed your location had been stagnant for a while and guessed you were in trouble." "Thank you," I replied sincerely. In this world, besides my grandfather, Ethan was probably the only one who truly cared for me. Why are you so good to me? I accidentally let my thoughts slip out loud. He looked away, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. I admire you. A strange sense of loss washed over me. I scolded myself for feeling disappointed. What was I expecting? Did I think he would have feelings for me? Right now, my priority was revenge. What was I even thinking? Your turn to answer. I prompted, shaking off my thoughts. Snapping back to reality, I casually replied. I don't like him. A satisfied smile spread across his face as he started the car. Chapter 11. A couple of days later, Linda came to see me. She accused me of disregarding sisterly bonds and seriously injuring Emily. I felt wronged but also satisfied. You can't just say whatever you want. Do you have proof? Linda, frustrated, resorted to threats. Who else could it be? Do you have the guts to do it but not admit it? Believe me, I'll call the police. I shrugged, pointing to the door. Go ahead, don't let me stop you. She started wailing, attracting the attention of many colleagues. The commotion reached Ethan's ears. He called security and had Linda thrown out without mercy. I stood at the door, looking down at the disheveled Linda, and couldn't resist adding insult to injury. The esteemed wife of a company owner, lying so disgracefully at the rival's door, how shameful. Linda's lips trembled with rage, jumping up and down in fury. Luna, you'll pay for this. You'll be cursed. I laughed. What relationship do we have that would curse me? If anyone deserves a curse, it's you, for being a homewrecker. Not satisfied, I added. Now you're being forced out by a mistress with a child. How does it feel? Enjoying it? Linda gasped for breath, struggling to breathe. She then unleashed a torrent of curses, venting her anger. Ethan, rubbing his temples in frustration, directed the security. Throw her farther away. The security guards lifted Linda, dragging her away with difficulty. Her cursing grew fainter. I shrugged helplessly, commenting, What kind of people are these? So uncivilized, it's disgraceful. Ethan glanced at me, his voice cold. Come to my office. His authoritative tone and the pressure he exuded scared the onlookers away. Concerned colleagues watched me leave, worried. Everyone thought I was in for a scolding. But in reality, I was sitting comfortably across from him. Resting my chin on my hand, I confidently asked, Did you beat up Emily? He was working on his computer and responded with a slight nod. Curious, I asked. How did you do it? He looked up, smirking. I put a bag over her head and beat her up. I was speechless. What if she gets seriously hurt? You could face criminal charges. He tapped my forehead lightly. Who else knows it was me besides you? That made sense. But I persisted. What if? He leaned over the desk, looking down at me. She won't die. At worst, I'll pay compensation. At worst, pay compensation. He sounded so confident. Having money really makes a difference. I tentatively asked, Do you have enough assets to pay? He laughed, his smile widening. You've created so much revenue for me, how could I not? So it's all thanks to me? Without me, would he lack revenue? The answer was obviously no. My help was just the icing on the cake. Chapter 12. Emily's beating led to a high fever that wouldn't go down. The already chaotic Wang family fell into further disarray. At this critical moment, John's mistress showed up with their son. She made a huge scene, making sure everyone knew. Taking advantage of the chaos, a certain devious man and I poached many of their clients. By the time John dealt with his family issues, his business would be in shambles. Ethan leaned against the balcony, gazing at the stars, his tone lazy and casual. "Luna, I'll give you a gift for your birthday." Following his gaze, I saw the sparkling stars. I smiled. "Do I need to give you a return gift?" He turned to me, his eyes twinkling. "I don't need much." Our eyes met, and my heart raced. I quickly looked away, making an excuse to go to bed. The next day, I received a call from Eric. That long string of numbers was very familiar from my previous life. When I answered, he asked about Emily's condition. I replied irritably, "I'm not a doctor." He was silent for 2 seconds, then his tone turned hurt. "Are you hostile towards me?" My heart skipped a beat. He was very perceptive. I quickly denied it. "No. Actually, There was a noise on the other end, and I heard someone say, "Dr. Eric, Emily's indicators are abnormal. Come quickly." He hung up hurriedly. This life seemed to be veering off its original course. Half a month later, John transferred all his assets to Emily, including the remaining company shares. Ethan said they must have reached some agreement to settle the matter. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. At this point, with a child involved, money was all that mattered. Linda would undoubtedly fight for Emily's best interests. Meanwhile, I received a message from John. He said my grandfather was dying and wanted to see me one last time. In my previous life, my grandfather's health did decline around this time, and he passed away shortly after. I grew up with my grandfather, and he genuinely cared for me. In this life, I had been so focused on revenge that I neglected to visit him. I felt guilty and deeply saddened. So whether it was true or not, I had to go see him. Chapter 13. When Ethan found out, he offered to accompany me, worried about my safety, but he was too busy. I teased him. "Afraid your cash cow will run away?" His voice was cold, with a hint of seriousness. "I'll come find you when I'm done." He paused, his tone softening. "Be careful. Call me if you need anything." I nodded, feeling a warm current in my heart. Some things I had to handle myself. I couldn't always rely on him. He had already helped me a lot. Without him, none of this would have been possible. "Thank you, Ethan." He paused, his voice low and deliberate. "I don't like that title." I was taken aback and tentatively asked, "Then, Ethan? Ash?" He responded with a soft, "Ash?" That sounded very intimate. Shortly after returning home, my grandfather passed away. Before he left, he held my hand, his face full of worry. "Luna, I'm most worried about you. You've always been soft-hearted, never standing up for yourself. Grandpa has nothing to leave you, but keep this old house. It can be a safe haven." I cried. "Grandpa, I'm sorry. I should have visited you more. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have let hatred consume me, losing my humanity and the only family I had. After my grandfather's end, I had no family left in the Wang household." At the funeral, Emily looked like a demon from hell. Her gaze was icy and filled with hatred. Her chest heaved violently, barely containing her rage. Linda was the same, though she directed much of her anger at the boy and his mother. After the funeral, my right eye kept twitching, and I had a strong sense of foreboding. It grew stronger, making me extremely uneasy. Chapter 14. At that moment, John approached me, wanting to talk. I exuded rejection. "We have nothing to talk about." John sat on a bench, looking older. "Luna, I know you hate me, and I deserve it." I sneered. "You owe more than just me." He hung his head, muttering, "I owe you, and I owe your mother. Your hatred is justified." I made to leave. "Is that all you wanted to say?" "No, I wanted to say." He stood up, blocking my way. "Luna, I have nothing to give you. There's a house in the west suburbs. It's not in the best location, but it's quiet. You can't stay at Ethan's place forever, I stepped back, my eyes cold. I'd rather stay at his place than yours. He hurriedly explained. I didn't mean anything by it. I just thought, with your abilities, you can support yourself. I don't have long to live and wanted to make amends before I go. Not long to live? What did he mean? I smirked, my eyes cold. Some things can never be made right. I once had a dream where I donated my kidney to your daughter. 2 years later, she needed another, and you turned to me again. From start to finish, you said nothing, condoning their actions. In the end, I was hit by a car, and my remaining kidney went to her. John looked at me in shock, trying to comfort me. Luna, that was just a dream. It won't come true. My lips curled into a cold smile. If I don't resist, it will. In this life, if I hadn't met Ethan early, everything would have repeated. Even more tragically, my phone chimed with a message. Ethan had sent a short message. Luna, I'm coming to take you home. I couldn't help but smile, replying with a simple, okay. Suddenly, I felt dizzy. Before I passed out, I saw. Chapter 15. When I woke up, I found myself lying on a hotel bed. My hands and feet were tied, and there was a cloth stuffed in my mouth. Emily sat by the bed, smiling. Seeing me awake, she gave a sinister grin. Sister, you're awake just in time. I have a big gift for you. I mumbled and struggled. My wrists hurt terribly, but the ropes didn't budge. Don't struggle, I tied them tightly. She leaned down, whispering in my ear. Her beautiful red lips spat out venomous words. Aren't you pregnant? Let me beat it out of you. With that, she punched my stomach with all her strength. I curled up in pain, cold sweat soaking my back. Then came the second punch, the third, raining down like a storm. My internal organs felt like they were on fire. The pain intensified, engulfing me completely. Emily laughed maniacally, rubbing her reddened fists. Still no blood? Sister, are you lying, or is the baby too strong? She punched me again. Damn it, Emily, are you blind? Can't you see my flat stomach? If I survive this, I'll kill her. Her eyes gleamed with malice as she choked me, gritting her teeth. You won't save me, fine? But you dare to harm me? Thanks to you, I'm in kidney failure again. This time, I'll take your kidney. My limbs were numb with cold, unable to move. Fear gripped my heart, she might really kill me. I continued to struggle. The ropes scraped my skin, and I could feel them grinding against my bones. Unsatisfied, she tore my clothes. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. Sister, you have a pretty face and a nice body. I think they'll like it. Panic cleared my foggy mind. She was even more vicious than I had imagined. Ignoring the pain in my wrists, I yanked hard, freeing my bloodied hands, and pushed her away with all my strength. With blurred vision, I struggled to untie my feet. Then I stumbled towards the door. There were sounds outside. Were they coming? My heart sank, and I turned towards the window. Emily pinned me against the window, the blinding sunlight making me dizzy. She dug her nails into my wrist wound, her face twisted with malice. Luna, want to die? I'll help you. Once you're dead, your kidney will be mine. Chapter 16. Half of my body hung out the window, my consciousness fading. My grip on the window ledge weakened. I thought, maybe falling from the 3rd floor wouldn't kill me. Better to fall than be violated. Closing my eyes in despair, Ethan's face flashed in my mind. With a bitter smile, I hoped we could meet again. I grabbed Emily's collar. Emily, let's die together. As I fell, a strong hand caught my arm. With a loud crash, Emily was thrown against the wall. Ethan's face was dark with anger, his lips pale, almost bloodless. He pulled me up, gently placing me on the ground. His shoulders trembled, his fists clenched tightly. His voice was hoarse, trembling slightly. Luna, don't be afraid. I'll take you to the hospital. Seeing him, I felt all my strength drain away, collapsing into his arms. The feeling of surviving was wonderful. Ethan's eyes were bloodshot, his expression fierce like an enraged beast. He stood up, grabbing Emily by the neck, dragging her to the window. Emily's eyes widened in terror, desperately trying to scream, but no sound came out. Just as he was about to throw her out, I managed to stop him, despite my violent coughing. "Ethan, don't. It's not worth ruining your future for her." He paused, then reluctantly threw her to the ground. As he was about to carry me out, two men blocked the door. Emily screamed hysterically. "Stop them, beat them to the worst if you have to." This woman was determined to kill me. Ethan placed me on the bed, his voice dark and threatening. "Hide well. If you're scared, close your eyes." I struggled to stay conscious, hoarsely warning. "Be careful. If you can't win, run. Don't worry about me." He cupped my face, his breath hot against my skin. "I won't leave you." Rolling up his sleeves, he revealed his white forearms. His shirt collar was casually unbuttoned. His knuckles cracked as he clenched his fists. I watched him intently, my fingers digging into my palms, afraid I might faint. Ethan handled the two men with ease. I guessed he had some self-defense training. 1 against 2, he didn't falter, even gaining the upper hand. He grabbed one man, punching him repeatedly in the face. The man's face was bloodied, his teeth knocked out. Still unsatisfied, Ethan stretched his muscles and approached the other man. The man retreated, pulling out a knife. The blade gleamed menacingly. I jumped up in fear, the pain making me gasp. I fell back to the ground. The commotion attracted the attention of the hotel owner. At the critical moment, the police arrived. Chapter 17. Seeing the situation, the two men immediately confessed, implicating Emily. Emily was furious, nearly exploding on the spot, but Linda bailed her out. I was too injured and spent over half a month in the hospital. During my stay, Ethan visited whenever he could. He caused quite a stir. One time, a male doctor was examining me. As soon as he lifted my shirt, Ethan's face darkened. His gaze turned icy, and he shoved the doctor aside, his voice freezing. "Get a female doctor." I sighed. Doctors don't see gender, only patients. Ethan stared at me for a full minute, then squeezed out a sentence. "I don't mind putting him in a cast for 3 months." After that, no male doctors came to my room, except for those unafraid of a cast. Like Eric. He visited frequently, and I worried for him. But his luck held, always arriving when Ethan wasn't around. Until one day, he wasn't so lucky. That day, he was discussing Emily's condition, his eyes full of sympathy. He said she was so young, yet had lost her health, now relying on dialysis. Who knew how long the next transplant would last? I was dozing off, barely listening. Then he suddenly said, "Let's take care of her together." I stared at him, wondering if he was out of his mind. He grabbed my hand, startling me. With a loving gaze, he said, "Luna, from the first time I saw you, The door crashed open. Ethan's face was dark with anger, his presence overwhelming. Eric stopped talking, reluctantly leaving. "I'll see you tomorrow." "See me? If you come again, you'll be dead." I pulled the covers over my head, pretending to sleep. It was safer to stay silent. Ethan wasn't willing to let me off easily. I was pulled out of bed, nervously lowering my head. Suddenly, he pulled me into his arms. He cupped my face, and to my shock, he kissed me. The kiss started gently, a mere brush of lips, but then it deepened, becoming more intense. My heart raced, my mind a whirlwind. My cheeks, ears, and neck flushed with heat, spreading a warm glow. At that moment, I could clearly hear my own heartbeat, pounding with excitement. Was this what it felt like to fall in love? Chapter 18. "Luna, do you want to try being with me?" He looked down at me, his eyes filled with an indescribable tenderness. I tried to stay calm, but my breathing was erratic. When I didn't answer right away, he kissed me again, this time with a hint of aggression, as if punishing me for my hesitation. After that day, Eric never showed up again. I heard he had been beaten up, both hands in casts. I sighed, asking Ethan if he was responsible. He nonchalantly replied, "He dared to touch your hand. Breaking his hands was lenient." I silently mourned for Eric, he deserved it. Ethan peeled an apple for me, handing it over. His gaze was serious as he said, "Tomorrow is your birthday. I originally planned to give you half of John's company shares, but I've changed my mind." I was surprised. So the mysterious man who bought half of John's shares was him. He leaned in close, so close I could see the pores on his face. "I want to buy his entire company and give it to you." I quickly refused. "I don't want it." I really didn't care for it, nor did I want to go back there. He frowned, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Okay, I understand." What did he understand? Well, on the day I was discharged, I finally understood what he meant. That guy had bankrupted John's company. I didn't know how he did it, but John was now undergoing financial liquidation. I had to admit, Ethan was my greatest ally on my path to revenge. Chapter 19. Eventually, the Wang family disappeared from the fashion industry. Not long after, John passed away. It was then I learned he had been terminally ill. With John's death, the Wang family had no chance of recovery. Linda and Emily's lives were no longer as comfortable as before. I saw Emily twice after that. Her gaze was still filled with hatred, but her eyes had lost their spark, and she no longer acted arrogantly. I wanted to rub salt in the wound, but in the end, all I said was, "What goes around comes around. Only those who start well can end well." Gradually, I stopped having nightmares. Maybe I had come to terms with my past, or maybe it was because I had someone by my side. Unknowingly, he had shielded me from all the thorns, warming my wounded heart. Ethan in the dating phase was like a different person. Sweet words flowed effortlessly, never repeating. I deeply suspected he had been hiding his true self all along. Was this the real him? There he was, leaning pitifully on my shoulder, whining. "Ah, honey, I think I have low blood sugar." I sighed, pulling him up. "Then I'll take you to the hospital." He wrapped his arms around me, cheekily saying, "No need for the hospital. I just need a sweet kiss." I rolled my eyes at him. Then he said, "I heard a French kiss should last 5 minutes." He smiled slyly. "What do you think it feels like?" How would I know? Well, the next moment, I found out. The feeling was indescribable. Then he turned down the air conditioning several degrees, asking with a mischievous smile, "Honey, are you cold? There's a natural, intelligent heater here. Want to try it?" I kicked him off the bed. "Turn up the heat and get out of the room." He pounced back, his eyes curving into charming crescents, laughing roguishly. "Then I'll roll with you." "Roll what?" "I'm not telling you." The end.